This note card is another project with the class to go, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to stamp the images and yes, put that gold on the front. So let's get our supplies together and get stamping. So we've got Versamark ink, we've got the stamps, we're using the Art Gallery stamp set again, and Mary Merlot ink. And in your kit you'll find an envelope, note card in Very Vanilla, as well as some Mary Merlot cardstock and an art piece, a smaller piece of Very Vanilla cardstock that we're going to be stamping on. Now please note that I have placed the art piece on the stamping pad because the stamps are photopolymer. And I'm going to be using the single floral stamp as indicated on the stamp set there. And I'm going to ink up my stamp with Mary Merlot ink. And the image will be stamped 3 times on that art piece. And yes, I do stamp over the edge of the paper. And that is okay. That's quite okay to do that. So I've done one. I'm going to do the second one. It's always a good idea to ink up your stamps thoroughly between stampings, and also to check the back of your stamp to make sure there isn't any ink on the edge of the block. There we go. That is the best way to, or should I say the worst way to ruin a project. Okay, now before I put the stamp away, there's a couple of other things I want to stamp. So I'm going to bring the note card out, and I'm going to stamp the lower corner, just as shown in the sample. And I'm going to again ink up my stamp set. Oh, there's the sample. And I'll just stamp the top part of the flower in the corner. You can use any part of a stamp at all to stamp on the inside. You can do it on the side, the bottom, the corner. And now let's stamp the envelope. It's always nice to coordinate things. And we're going to stamp the floral image on the flap of the envelope. And I'm going to stamp it on one on either side. Now you can opt to do it any way you wish. You can opt to stamp it on the front of the envelope, or just stamp it once, or stamp it in the middle. You have options. This is just a sample. Now, sometimes what happens is if you've been using your stamps a lot and you stamp again, and sometimes one or more of the images don't stamp well. Now, with a photopolymer, you can try and stamp over it. Be very careful doing that. It can ruin your project, but if you're willing to give it a try, just be careful. Okay, there we go. And I think we're about ready for some magic. Yes, we're going to be that. Yes, we're going to be putting that on it. And that is the leaf gilding. And we're going to use that small floral stamp like that one. Now, I hate to say it, but that's the inside of the bigger flowers. But for the intents of this video, it's a small flower. And I'm going to be using Versamark leaf gilding, heat and stick powder, as well as that little stamp. And I'm also going to use an embossing buddy because this process is very much like the initial stages of heat embossing. So now some people don't do this step, but I think it's very valuable that you do that. Now I keep my leaf gilding in a covered Tupperware container, and I'll keep it covered until I'm ready to use it. So I'm applying Versamark to my stamp, and I'm only going to apply the gilding to one stamp image cluster at a time. And that's because I have found that once activated, the heat and stick powder does not stay sticky for very long. So until you learn to work very swiftly with the leaf gilding, it's probably wise to just do one flower cluster at a time. So here I'm finished with the Versamark, and I brought out a piece of copy paper just to catch the excess heat and stick powder. As you can see, it looks very much like clear embossing powder. And when you put it on, you can see that the image now looks a little cloudy. And I'm going to bring out my heat tool and just watch carefully. It's the magic change. It happens very quickly. It turns clear right in front of your eyes. And when it's clear, it's what you call activated, which means that it is now sticky glue, tacky. And for the leaf gilding to stay on your image, it adheres to anything tacky. So if you have anything in your craft room nearby that is tacky, perhaps remove it. Okay, then you take a little bit of the leaf gilding and you just apply it over the tacky heat and stick powder. And you just use a brush and just brush off the excess. Now, this was a brush that I had in my stash. I'm sure you have like a stipple brush or something. And you just want to remove the stuff that is not part of where we stamped. And sometimes it needs a little help. And then I'll just brush the remainder off with an unused dryer cloth. So I'll start with the next one. Now, like I said, some will do all of the flowers at the same time, and then they'll, what I call, immerse the entire art front in the Gilded Flakes, and it can get very messy. This actually approach of doing one flower at a time reduces the mess in your environment and ensures success with your project. So that's the second flower cluster. Now again, watch closely as the heat and stick powder melts. It just happens in front of your eyes. And bring in the flakes. You know, applying these gilded leafings, it just makes your project so spectacular. But like I said, it can be a messy process, so just take steps to control or to contain the leaves. You don't need to find gilded leafing in the living room, for instance, or in the kitchen. Now, heat and stick powder can be used to apply glitter to your work, and that ensures that the glitter stays in place and doesn't fall off your card in the envelope or on your craft table. So this is a really great way to apply glitter as well. Okay, and when you're done, you just put the remainder of the excess heat and stick powder back into your jar. And you know, because it looks so much like the embossing powders, it might be wise to label the lid of the heat and stick powder. I haven't done so, but I think after this video, I think I'm going to do that. Very good advice, Maria. Now, in your PDF, there is a handout as well on tips and techniques for applying gilded leafing to various projects. So if you get a chance, leaf through that. and also in the PDF are the dimensions for this project. Now, the note card and envelope are for sale in the catalog, but you will get them as part of your kit. Okay, now I think what I'm going to do is stamp directly onto my artwork. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then by all means stamp on a scrap and trim it and then adhere it to your note card. I'm using Black Memento ink. We can use Mary Merlot ink as well. And I'm using Thank You. But there's many other sentiments on the stamps that you could use. There, I think I did that okay. Now, I'm going to now adhere that to the Mary Merlot mat. And I'm using my favorite adhesive. The Stampin' Seal adhesive. I also like to use Tombow, but I can be a little bit messy with that. But if you feel more comfortable with Tombow, that's fine. Now, before I attach it to the card front, I'm going to be wrapping some gold twine around it 3 times. Now, you'll notice that I put a little bit of some tape on the back before I turned it over. And that was in the hope that it would, that the twine would catch on it and prevent it from slipping while I was doing this wrapping and tying process. It didn't work this time, but sometimes it does work. So now I'm going to try and tie it into a knot and then into a bow. And let's see if I can do it. Some days my arthritic hands say, I don't think so. So after I tie a knot at first, then I'll take one of the loose ends and slide it under all 3 layers, tie another knot, and then tie it into a bow. By golly, I think I did it. Yes, I did. Good going. And then sometimes I'll take a glue dot and just put it underneath the bow to make sure that it stays in place. Okay, back to my adhesive, and I'm going to now adhere it to the front of the note card. Now, it's important at this point to check to make sure that you are putting it on the front of the note card, Maria. Check it. Oh, good. There you go. I'm sure all of you at some point in time have put your art piece on the card upside down. It's always wise to check. Now, before we finish, there's one final golden touch. We're going to add some gilded gems. These are gorgeous little embellishments, and they'll be in your kit as well. And we'll apply 3 because the rule of 3s apply in adding embellishments. 1 is okay, 3 is okay, 2 not so much. So the rule of 3s, or the rule of odd numbers, maybe I should say that. Okay, there's your finished note card. My sample, and of course the one you're going to do. And this is a fun project for the class to go. Enjoy making yours.